Welcome to this tutorial video on the RM Young 05103 wind monitor. At the conclusion of this video, you should be able to understand three things. One, understanding the mechanics of how the RM Young measures wind speed and wind direction. Two, being able to install and perform routine maintenance on an RM Young. And three, being able to wire an RM Young into a CR1000 data logger. The RM Young 05103 and 0510345, or Alpine version, are propeller anemometers that measure wind speed and wind direction for the ECONet. These sensors are located at two heights, 6 meters and 10 meters. The 10-meter height is the official WMO standard for wind speed, while the 6-meter height is used by the Forest Service to help with fire, weather, danger, and forecasting. The difference between the two is mainly in the aesthetics, with the Alpine version being black with a smaller body and propeller. This ensures that the sensor can repel ice and snow and continue to function properly. The Alpine sensors are found at our high elevation ECONet stations. The sensor works by using propeller rotation, which produces an AC sine wave signal with frequency proportional to wind speed. The signal is induced in a stationary coil by a 6-pole magnet mounted on the propeller shaft. For each revolution, 3 complete sine wave frequencies are produced. Wind direction is transmitted using a 10K ohm precision conductive plastic potentiometer, which requires a regulated excitation voltage. With a constant voltage applied to the potentiometer, the output signal is an analog voltage directly proportional to the wind direction angle. Alright, when we're looking at repairing a RM Young sensor, the first thing you're going to have to do before we even talk about replacing bearings or changing the sensor out is you're going to have to lower the tower. These tripod towers have screws that keep the tower mounted to the base that has been put in concrete. Most stations have 2 screws on each leg. This station's an exception, only has 1, but the concept's identical for what you need to do. The tools you're going to need are, you're going to need some WD-40, of course, to loosen up the bolts themselves. You're also going to need either 2 socket wrenches or a socket wrench and a drill. You're going to need a 9/16 socket for these screws right here. Now, to lower it, it's basically hinged on. So what you're going to have to do is you're going to figure out which way the tower lowers. These towers lower in one direction only. So in this video, this tower is actually going to lower this way. So what we'll need to do is we'll need to loosen 2 of the bolts, and we'll loosen the ones closest to the direction which we're actually going to lower the tower, and then one of the bolts we'll take off completely so we can actually lower the tower. Before you do any of this stuff, make sure the station's turned off, which you can do in the white enclosure box. That way when you lower it, you're not recording data that's inaccurate. Alright, so we've loosened the bolts in the direction we're going to lower the tower. About to take the one bolt out, as our technician here, Jim's, about to do. And as he takes it out, make sure you have a second person here holding the tower, because if you don't, then the tower could fall, and if you're not bracing for it, that's very expensive damage to the tower itself. So he's out. So when you lower these, you want 2 people just to be safe, and now as we lower it, you're just going to walk it down. As you walk it down, you see we have a ladder to hold it in place. Sometimes that ladder is not in place. Got it. So make sure that second person's got a good hold of it. Lower it down. Now it should be in good place. Just make sure when you're lowering the tower that things near the ground aren't being impeded, such as the leaf wetness sensor. That way it doesn't come crashing down when you come down. And that way you've lowered the tower. Now you can do your maintenance on the weather sensors. And we'll show you just in a minute how you go through that. Okay, if we ever have to send you a new RM Young for installation, it's going to come in a white box. I've opened the box here. You should see 4 things inside the box. You should see the body of the sensor, the propeller, the orientation ring, which is there on the bottom left, and a bag of tools, which you see on the right there. That should include a spacing gap and a hex wrench. Okay, when we're installing an RM Young for the first time at a site after you've lowered the tower, like was shown earlier in the video, There are a number of steps you're going to have to do to install one onto an arm. Remember the parts we saw in the box earlier here? We had the 4 parts. Here's what you're going to do. First, you're going to take the mounting ring and you're going to place it on the post, but you're not going to tighten. You're just going to get it on the post for the time being. Then you're going to put the body of the sensor onto the post as well. Again, not tightening. The reason why we don't tighten these at the moment is because we need to make sure we orient the sensor properly for wind direction. To do that, the box right here in the middle, the junction box that has all the wires in it, needs to be facing south. So in the example here, south is this way. Once it's in place, tighten it. The only tool you're going to need to do this is a flathead screwdriver. So make sure that's tightly in place. Okay. And then what you're going to do, once that's done, then you're going to bring the mounting ring back up and you're going to lock it to the body. There's a notch located right underneath the junction box. There's also a notch located on the mounting ring itself. Once that's in place, once those lock in place, there's only one way it's going to lock. There should be no gap between the 2 rings. Once that's done, you can then tighten the mounting ring. Okay. Once those are in place, you can then put the propeller onto the sensor. And to do that, all you do is you unscrew the nose cap, like so. And as you put the propeller on, there's going to be 2 sides to the propeller. There's going to be a smooth side and a rough side. You're going to put the rough side in first, and it should lock up with the rest of the nose here. And once it's locked in place, you just hand tighten it back on. And then you're good to go. You've fully installed it. In the future, if you need to actually replace the sensor, the orientation ring plays a big role here. You're not going to have to remove that. You're just going to have to remove the body, and then you put the new body in. It's already aligned. You don't have to worry about realigning it. So that's how you install an RM Young. Okay, the only maintenance you ever need to do on an RM Young 05103 is to replace the bearings in the sensor that help generate wind speed. If these bearings aren't replaced, every once in a while you start hearing clanging noises, clacking noises, and your wind speeds at low levels are completely inaccurate, and you can actually damage the sensor to the point beyond repair. So what we're going to do is we're going to show you the step-by-step instructions on how to replace these bearings. These bearings need to be replaced every couple of years. I've zoomed in here so you can get a sense of what you need to do. So the first step is to remove the nose cone from the rest of the body. So the nose cone is right here. It's from the propeller on back to pretty much this white part right here, the white part of the body. So what you want to do is unscrew it using your hand. So I'm going to walk over here and do that real quick. So you're going to unscrew with your hand. It should come right out. And I'm going to move this out of the way for now so you can enjoy the rest of this part of the video. So here's our body. We're going to then need to remove the propeller. So if you remember on the installation video, to remove the propeller, just undo the propeller slides off, and you have the shaft and the nose of the sensor. So on the bottom here is a magnet, and this magnet, if you don't believe me, let me grab the hex wrench we'll need in a second here. So here's a hex wrench. There you go, is the magnet. So you're going to need to remove the magnet so you can get the shaft out of the body. So to do that, there's an actual actually a hex bolt right there. So that's how I've gotten it there. And you loosen it, just go lefty loosey. You don't need to unscrew the bolt completely or the screw completely. You just need to loosen it enough to get the magnet off the shaft, like I've done so. So the magnet's off. And then now what you're going to need to do is you're going to need to remove the shaft. So to do that, you just pull on the shaft, pull it right out. So now that the shaft's been removed, you should see there's a bearing right there. So there's 2. There's one bearing here, and there's another bearing here. You need to remove those bearings. Now, there are many ways to do this. A trick I like to use is I like to take the shaft and actually put it in backwards and then pry it out. Just be careful with how you do this. So just loosely pry it, maybe. There we go, loosely pry it. There's one. And there's two, so they're both out. So now you should be able to see right through and see the green shirt on the other end of that. So that is, the bearings are out. So now you can clean it. I like to use like a little can of air spray just to kind of clean it out. So now we're gonna put the new bearings in. So put the shaft down here for a second. So the new bearings, when you get them, they're kind of small. So the bearings look, see if I can show it in the video. Let me zoom in. The bearings are there. That's how big they are. Pretty tiny. Yep. So the bearings are small. To put the bearings in, what you're going to need to do is they only go in one way, and you should be able to do it until they snap into place. So that one snapped in. And then snaps into place. So once it's snapped into place, we can then put our shaft back in. Be careful putting the shaft back in, because if you put it in too quick or it comes in at a wrong angle, it could pop this bottom one right out. There we go. It's in, it's locked into place. Now we're good to go. So we're going to put the magnet back on, but this is where you need the bearing gap gauge, which I have right here. So this gap gauge, the reason why we need it is that if we put the magnet too close to the body, then your wind speeds don't happen. So your low wind speeds don't happen. So we're gonna put that on. Then you're gonna slide the magnet to that point. You can hold it all with one hand, great. And you just tighten it back up. You can remove the gap gauge. And then at this point, you just go back to put the propeller back on. You're going to hand tighten the cap to the nose, so we're good to go there. I'm going to bring back in the star of the show. And I'm just going to reinsert. Make sure this is level when you reinsert. If it's not, it's going to become very tough to tighten at the end, and if it is, you're going to need to unscrew it and put it back in properly. So just do it by hand. And there you go, you've replaced the bearings in an RM Young. Okay, to wire an RM Young into a CR1000 data logger, you have to know if the sensor is at 10 meters or at 6 meters. The wiring is almost the same for both, it's just the red wire and the green wire go into different channels depending on the height of the sensor. So in the example here, you see it set up as if it is a 10 meter RM Young. The red wire for an RM Young at 10 meters is going to go into the P2 channel. If it's a 6 meter, it's going to go into the P1 channel. The green wire for an RM Young, if it's at 10 meters, will go into analog 7 or A7 or the blue number 7 on the data logger. If it is a 6 meter wind sensor, it's going to go into analog 6 or A6 or the blue number 6 on the data logger. Those are the green wires. All the other wires go into the same channels no matter if it's a 10 meter or a 6 meter. The blue wire is going to go into the VX2 channel. That's our excitation voltage for wind direction. Yellow, white, black, and clear are all going to go into ground channels, and you can use whatever ground channels are available to you on the data logger.
To review, the RM Young 05103 and 05103-45 measure wind speed and wind direction at 6 meters and 10 meters above the surface. The 10 meter height is the official wind speed and direction measurement for the ECONet, while the 6 meter height is used for fire weather applications. The Alpine version, or the -45, are only used in our high elevation sites, and the difference between the two are mainly in the aesthetics, meaning that it's smaller, has a black body, smaller propeller to prevent from ice and snow from causing damage to the sensor. Now when installing the sensor, make sure to lower the tower first. You're going to need to loosen the bolts that are used to hinge the tower and remove the bolt on the leg opposite of the direction the tower is being lowered. During the installation, remember to install the orientation ring first onto the post, but don't tighten. Then you're going to install the body and align the junction box properly. Remember, you want that junction box facing south. Once that's aligned properly, you can tighten that up and then connect the orientation ring to the body and tighten the clamps on both. So the only maintenance needed to be done on the sensor is that every 2 years we need to replace the bearings. So a few instructions to remember. Remember to remove the nose cone from the body. You can do this by your hand, with your hand. And then you're going to want to disconnect that magnet on the bottom of the nose cone to remove the shaft. There's a little hex key that you can get to do that. When installing the new bearings, just make sure they snap into place. If not, then when you install the shaft, it may not be properly installed. And then when you're putting the magnet back onto the end of the shaft, remember to use that bearing gap gauge to ensure that the magnet's far enough away from the bottom of the shaft so that when it's tightened, the sensor can properly measure wind speed and wind direction. Here's the wiring diagram for the RM Young 05103 and 05103-45. They're similar. Remember, you have to make sure you have a 6 meter or a 10 meter sensor. Those can be found on the cable, on the wires by the data logger. So the big difference is really the red and green wires. So the only ones that are going to go in different channels based on if it's 6 or 10. If it's 6 meter, then you're going to put the red in P1, the green in A6. If it's 10 meter, then you're going to put the red in P2 and the green in A7. All the other cables, no matter which height the sensor is going in, go in the same channel. So blue is in the excitation channel, EX2, while white, black, clear, and yellow all go into analog ground. You can put them in the same analog ground channel or split them up 2 by 2.
Thank you for watching this tutorial video on the RM Young 05103. For more videos, visit climate.ncsu.edu.